On November 4th, 1966, Venice drowned. The tide hit a historic 194 centimeters, pushing almost 2 meters of water into the city and submerging ancient archives, churches, and businesses. Today, the danger is accelerating from two directions. The city is physically sinking, a process called subsidence, while global sea levels rise to meet it. A permanent concrete seawall could stop the ocean, but sealing off the lagoon would suffocate the delicate enclosed ecosystem that relies on the natural flush of the tides. To survive, Venice required a system that could remain completely out of sight for most of the year, yet block the weight of the Adriatic on a moment's notice. This map shows the three distinct inlet gaps connecting the lagoon to the Adriatic Sea: Lido, Malamocco, and Chioggia. These are the three pinch points defended by a megaproject known as MOSE. The engineering plan was simple in theory: place a series of massive gates entirely underwater. For 90% of the year, they would lie hidden on the seafloor. By keeping the gates out of the way, the natural tides could continue to flush the lagoon. This design prioritized the environmental health of the water over more traditional and far cheaper engineering methods. But getting those gates into the water was a disaster. The initial estimate pegged the project at €5.5 billion, but costs eventually climbed past $6 billion. In 2014, an operation by the Guardia di Finanza uncovered a web of rigged contracts, bribes, and slush funds, leading to the arrest of dozens of officials and entrepreneurs managing the project. The public backlash was immediate. With construction stalled and the budget drained, local media and environmentalists began labeling the unfinished structure a monument to waste. By the mid-2010s, the political arrests and financial ruin made the prospect of a functioning seawall feel like a fading hope. Despite the bureaucratic wreckage, the physical machine was slowly taking shape. The finalized system consists of 78 independent steel barriers. Each gate stretches up to 30 meters long and weighs 350 tons. This cross-section shows the system's trigger. The hollow gate rests flat on the seabed until the incoming tide is forecast to exceed 110 centimeters. Once that threshold is hit, the mechanism pumps the seawater out of the hollow steel gates and replaces it with compressed air. Now buoyant, the massive gates rotate upward on their hinges, rising to form a continuous physical barricade against the sea. This is the result: a line of bright yellow barriers breaking the surface, physically separating the Adriatic from the lagoon. It is a striking contrast. A project born out of a corrupt bureaucracy ultimately produced a system based on pristine, functional physics. Venice needed that physics to work. In November 2019, the high tide surged to 187 centimeters. Marks Square was swallowed, shops were destroyed, and the city was left paralyzed. Less than a year later, on October 3, 2020, another exceptional tide bore down on the coast. But this time, officials triggered the first full-scale activation of all 78 barriers. Outside the gates, the Adriatic surged over 1.5 meters, but inside the lagoon, the alleyways remained dry. The successful test didn't erase the years of scandal, but it did change the reality on the ground. For the first time, the gates were no longer a theoretical solution. They were a functioning defense. Today, the system has become a routine part of the city's defense. In 2024 alone, the MOSE protected Venice on more than 30 separate occasions. Every time those gates rise, they shield the city's infrastructure from the sea, preventing between 200 and 400 million euros in damages every year. For generations, Venetians watched the tides with deep anxiety. Today, exceptional storm surges hit the coast and pass by almost entirely unnoticed by the public. It shares a history with landmarks like the Golden Gate Bridge. Major infrastructure often outlives the decades of controversy and skepticism required to build it. The path to completion was defined by systemic corruption and staggering costs. But for a city that has been slowly sinking for centuries, those billions of euros bought the one thing that actually mattered: the ability to stay above the water.